Hello. It just was 11:11, and my dear friend Christina always says at 11:11, honor your ancestors. And how perfect, almost perfect, because I didn't start it exactly at 11:11, but it started up here. Did I want to talk about our ancestors? I'm sitting here by my little thingy, and I just wanted to light some candles, although it is super hot outside, so lighting candles might not be the perfect thing to do right now. Either way, I'm doing it just because it looks so much nicer, so much more inviting. What made me think about this topic? If you haven't heard it on stories, which was a few days ago, I was talking about my experience dealing with pain, with heat, and I was reflecting on, is it possible that if you have ancestors that dealt with humidity and heat, that you might, from your physical ability, or rather experience, past experiences, would you be able to cope with it differently? And so I reflected on that piece of how do I cope with it as I'm moving through heat. If I don't consolidate my brain, that would tell me it's too hot, don't go, it's not safe, and then so on and so forth. If I listen to my body, would my body still, one, be able to do it, and two, want to do it, right? Because sometimes, not always, things that are comfortable is what we want, like even physically. Or think about exercise. If you're exercising, it's not something you're like, yeah, I want to do it. I mean, maybe you are, but oftentimes it's like, I got to do it, not I want to do it, right? And so I just was reflecting on this piece, and I don't think we spent much time reflecting on our ancestry, our parents, our grandparents, and their parents, and so on and so forth. And not that I think we should be spending a lot of time on it, but I think it's very useful to reflect on it and to just see, oh, maybe I was in a call yesterday and I brought this question up because I was just curious to other areas, if that is something that might be of interest, or rather something that I've been thinking about. And so in relationship to food, that was food and illnesses, there are all these questions. For example, when you go to the doctor, there's these questions like, does anybody in your family ever had XYZ, right? Breast cancer, anxiety, depression, whatever, right? There's like a variety of things. And so we're adding our comments. We're saying like yes to this, no to this. But what's going to happen with that information, right? This information is here to help us to pay attention to certain aspects in our life that might be a little bit more, where we want to pay a little bit more attention, right? Be a little bit more, alarming seems too much, like, oh my God, I gotta pay attention, like more, take it back. So there are different parts we can look at this. And I don't actually want to spend much time about ancestry as such. I just want to bring that question in to ask ourselves, who are my ancestors? Where did they live? Where did they come from? What wars did they have to fight? What ailments did they have to go through? What environments were they in? Had they deal with lack of food, lack of finances, lack of safety, like room safety of like spaciousness, right? Like space. Did they have to be afraid of other humans, which we all have to do these days, right? Though is it particularly to the group of people that I come from? And obviously, including myself, we are a mix of backgrounds that can make it even more challenging if we are looking at our daily lives, our behaviors, how we cope with challenges, because it's not a straight line. None of us are pure beings anymore, right? Like even if your ancestry is from Europe, there's a whole bunch of different Europeans from Southern Europe, Northern Europe. They all had to fight different battles. If you're more from the northern one, there were Vikings that were involved in your ancestry. If you're in the southern part, maybe that's more like the Romans or whatever, right? And then if you go more in towards Asia, there were the other ones. Anyway, just to give you an idea of like how incredible it is. And also witnessing the challenges we have these days that also showcase the part, not just our ancestry of like the physical form, also the intellectual form where religion is part of that, right? How we mentally have been formed in a certain way, depending on what our ancestors wanted us to believe. And, you know, think of pharaohs, right? From Egypt, or other groups of people in the Middle East, like anywhere, like go back, far back, right? Before we had technology, before we were able to communicate past countries and states and land, right? Go back to those, just imagine those times when all you knew was the people you lived with. All you knew was there is something out there and I have no clue what that is. And these days, because we have all the technology, we feel like we know. We feel like, you know, knowing, like seeing what's happening in the Middle East, seeing what's happening in other countries, right? We feel like we know what they're being through. We know what they're experiencing, when in fact we have no idea. We have no idea. And that's not to say don't get involved in it or don't be an activist for something, right? Like that's not my message here. The message really is, what are we aware of? And what do we want to believe in? Because that is obviously part of it, is me creating that belief, that reality that I want to live in. And maybe there's a part I don't realize that I don't even have. It's not even me that has this impact on what I'm thinking and believing, right? Maybe it's something greater than myself. So that's where this curiosity of ancestry really comes in. And maybe you've been more driven making decisions from your mind, but maybe when you are connecting to this ancestry, you might be able to do way more than you could have imagined. Or maybe you realize that what you have been accomplished has been beyond what your ancestors would have ever imagined you do. And so all this conversation is about is to open up, to expand, to see what the world really is like. Because at the end of the day, it's created by you, the vision that you have, and the information that you have. And you create that reality. And I'm just here to invite you to expand that reality, to expand the knowing that you have. And I was talking in my stories today about, it was about dislike, disagree. And I wasn't related it to today's live to talk about this. I just realized that maybe so much, like it might actually need to be mentioned here too, because the part of expansion, the changes of when our ancestors, thousands of years ago, let's do like far away, right? Thousands of years ago, where there was no communication beyond your immediate surroundings. And so sometimes, to me, it feels like this is still how we're acting. And even though we have all this information, we're expanding in knowledge and information and like spaciousness, but at the same time, we're also limiting ourselves, because the moment we don't like something, and it's not just one dislike, it might be multiple things we don't like, be it about what's happening in the world, happening with your country, happening with your government, happening with whatever is not in your control. There's a lot of things to dislike. And so when we look at it from a perspective where we just recognize, I don't agree with it, not right away into I don't like it. It's just like, I don't agree with how this is being taken care of or gone about it, whatever it is, right? It really doesn't matter what exactly it is, because no matter where you are, who you are, there is something you don't like, right? That's a given. It's a given that the moment you wake up in the morning, there is something you don't like. Be it that alarm clock that rings, be it that you woken up earlier than your alarm, maybe because you overslept your alarm, maybe you missed the train, maybe the clothes you wear, maybe the whatever, the look in your face, you name it. I am sure it's now 11:23, and maybe you've been up for 4 hours, 3 hours, who knows, maybe you just woke up, right? You already had something you didn't like. So now, can I just leave that dislike just right there? Same thing, if I find out something about my ancestors that I don't like, can I just leave it there as information? And then, even if I have more dislikes, to not hate this day, because today is Wednesday. This day, it's not its fault that there are things you don't like. Actually, it's me. I can change the way I look at things in life. I'm the one and only that can say, I didn't like that the alarm went off. But yet, that's reality. I have to wake up. So can I just leave it there that the alarm rang and that's it? And then when the next thing comes, I drop my coffee mug or my mug or everything spilled, to just say like, oh my God, I did not pay attention to this. This just happened, right? Or maybe I got distracted or whatever it is. And so as the day goes on and you have more things that don't fall, don't go your way, to just see each moment for its own moment and not feel like this is a horrible day. Because what if we missed a little something that actually went well? A little something that asked me to spend a little bit more time here. That maybe that cup of tea or coffee or whatever that spilled, even though it made me late for a good reason. Or maybe it's because I was already late, and I always have this. I always remind myself that I'm trying to leave early enough that I'm never late. Not late to the end result, but late in the leaving. Because the moment I am late, the moment I leave late in a rush, I am guaranteed that there are going to be more things in my way. That's just guaranteed. I can almost swear that that's going to happen every single time I am running late. And if I can accept that, I either make a change to just always tell myself 10 minutes earlier to leave, or have to play with my brain a little bit and just tell me to leave earlier. And guess what? Changing my time to 5-10 minutes earlier is not going to do the trick. It is literally doing it purposely to be up 10 minutes earlier or leave 10 minutes earlier or whatever it is. You have to make that decision, because otherwise we will trip on our own feet. That's a given. Another given. Because these phones, I used to do this. Trust me. I used to do this all the time. And guess what? I still ran late. And now, 30 some plus years later, my clock is, I think, on time. 1:27. I think that's about right. Maybe a minute. I don't know, but it's not much. My phone is always the right time. There is no gimmicks around it, right? So all I need to do is just give myself more time. And if I say I have to leave at 7, then 7 is not the latest time I have to leave. Then 7:10 is the latest time I have to leave. That's just what I do, right? So again, how did we end up here talking about ancestors? We came here is because at the end of the day, no matter what our ancestors did, we still have the opportunity to change. And so reflecting on ancestry is just giving me information that I might have a harder time changing certain things because my ancestors have done this before. So if I'm talking about thousands of years of habits, all right, let's just say 50, right? Thousands a little far, but like 50 years of habits. That's going to be your parents. It's going to be your grandparents. And it could be very likely somewhat be your great-great-grandparents. But let's just go with the two, right? Parents, great-parents, yes. Grandparents, great-parents, grandparents. Let's just go with those two, right? This is you here, then it's your parents, and it's your grandparents. And that's like, so let's say you're in your 40s, your parents are in your, I don't know, 70s, right? And then, or late 60s, and then your grandparents might still be alive, they're in their 90s, right? So we got these 3 generations. Maybe you have children. And they're teens, 20s, whatever, right? So we got like these 4 generations, a span of 90 years. And in those 90 years, if you look at your behaviors, you see a pattern. And there might be some things you do not like about your mom, your dad, about your kids. And when you look closer, you're like, I don't like it because I see myself, right? And maybe there are things you also like. Like, I don't want to just look at the negative piece. There's also a lot of positive things, right? I'm just focusing on the negative because that's the one thing that we want to change, right? So there are 2 things we can do. The first thing that we can do is to expand by saying, you know what, maybe what I thought is a negative thing might actually be a good thing. Here's an example. I always thought, my mom always told me I'm a minimalist. I only do the bare minimum. Turns out, many, many years later, I find out, recently, that is, I find out she too is a minimalist. I always thought that was like a negative thing about me. But then I realized we have this in common. And at first I thought that was something bad because I was commented on it oftentimes. But now I realize it actually is a good thing. I might spend a lot of time figuring out the easiest way to do this, and I still have to do it, but I find a way to do it with least effort. So in the end, it's actually a good thing, right? It might not be a good thing all the time, but it's definitely a good thing for a lot of things, right? And so that's really where, this is just an example, like how our information about our ancestry or ancestors can just be informative and helpful and make us better, feel better about ourselves, and if necessary, make a change, right? So when we talk about minimalistic thinking, for example, or being, that I question myself in moments where I feel like I need to prep more, that I'm going to prep more, and that I'm allowing myself to give myself that time. And so that's where I spend the time talking about running late, is because if you look, even that is something in your genetics. Like my dad, I think if I remember correctly, he used to run late all the time because he wanted to make sure to make the best of the time he's given. And I do the same. I was like, "Ooh, let me fit in this little thing." Do you have that too sometimes? It's like, let me fit in like one more thing, right? And so that really is to help us find more peace with the way we are, the way our parents are, the way our ancestors had led their way, and to have the ability now to make the changes necessary to live a better life for the future. Because whatever changes you make, your children, if you have children, will copy paste without you on them knowing. And then all of a sudden, it becomes a new thing we're doing. So take a good look at your behaviors. Take a good look at the things you don't like about yourself. And maybe even you don't like about your parents. And then see the connection to yourself. Because if you see that something you don't like in somebody else is actually either the same or the opposite of you, then you will be the one to make that change, to either accept or to make that change. So this is just a lovely topic that I could go on and on. But I wanted to leave it here with this. And I hope you enjoyed it. And let me know what your exploration is with your ancestry, with your behaviors, with your way of being in life and operating through it. And yeah, can't wait to hear what your thoughts are around ancestry and what you're finding out. So talk to you soon and all the best.